Well, welcome back to the Good Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Beers, and today's episode, we're going to talk about some of the roadblocks that face medicine today. And we have with us a great guest. I'm really excited to have Dr. Marshall Medley here. Dr. Medley is a board-certified vascular surgeon who spent decades in the operating room and helping patients with recovering from wounds in the wound care field. He's been guiding patients through some of the toughest health challenges, served as a medical director in Michigan, and now as the chief medical officer of a leading wound care manufacturing firm. Marshall brings with him a lifetime of patient-centered experience and mission of improving healthcare at scale. Over the years, he's seen firsthand a lot of the challenges and roadblocks that stand in the way between doctors and patients. And we're going to talk a lot about some of those challenges are and how that impacts the ability to actually practice good medicine. And that's the name of the podcast. So today we're going to talk about what those barriers are, what it means for medicine, and how hopefully we have some solutions. There's a lot to solve. So hopefully we come up with some good ideas. So thank you for joining the podcast.
I'm happy to be here.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we'll just jump right in. First of all, I think people would be interested in, and they might not be familiar with what a vascular surgeon is. So tell us a little bit about your training and your background, and what is vascular surgery? What types of patients did you treat?
Well, so in vascular surgery, the way I practiced it, it was all peripheral vascular, so it was outside of the chest. So it's cardiothoracic that does mostly chest work. There are now becoming more vascular surgeons that are doing aortic work in the chest. I was in the extremities and the abdomen. A lot of my work was dialysis access, aneurysms, arterial occlusive disease, so blocked arteries that we were bypassing. And then it ended up being probably 50 or 60% of my practice was doing wound care. That's how I ended up being a medical director at a couple of wound care centers. So we had it ends up being quite a wide variety of things you're taking care of, but it's also somewhat focused. So you do a general surgery residency, and then you do fellowship training in vascular surgery.
So it's a long training process. And
you look back at it, and it's just kind of the way it is. But if you explain to somebody that I was in school or training for 14 years, they drop their jaw and say, "What on earth?" So
it's crazy.
It's a long time, but really the residency and fellowship training is really work.
Yeah.
You're really working already.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess this is a great segue to talk a little bit about just your perspective of how things are changed since you were very first putting on that white coat as a medical student, as a resident, and how in your mind, what has changed is practicing medicine? So obviously you went from a practicing physician where you're doing surgeries to running wound care clinics where you're treating patients, and now kind of not treating patients anymore. And what kind of led you, what are some things that changed that kind of led you to say, maybe I don't want to be a practicing physician every day anymore?
Well, I'll accept some of the responsibility and naivete. They don't teach you in medical school about business.
Yeah.
And because of that, you end up coming out of your residency and running a practice that you don't know how to run. You end up dealing with billing and reimbursement. And if you're not trained in those things by your trainers, then you're flying by the seat of your pants to try to make your practice work. And that's when you really get exposed to the fact that medicine is a business.
It's a business.
And so
right.
it becomes incumbent upon the practitioner to balance the business and the personal, and the fact that you're supposed to be taking care of patients. And that's where I think physicians make the mistake. Some of them are too focused on business, and so they start making decisions that aren't good for the patient. Some people are trying to make decisions for the patients and are held up by business aspects like insurance and billing and things like that.
Yeah, so some of those things that like you said, you don't get exposed to that because it's in your training, you're being taught how to be a doctor, right? how to actually,
exactly.
the patient care side of things, but the business side, knowing and how big of a business this is now. I think it's, a third of our economy is healthcare, which is just crazy to think about. that's very different than it was when you and I were young.
Well, let me add to that economic data. We did some research recently, and I believe it was 2024, it might be 2023 data show that the spend on medical care in the world was $9.8 trillion. And in the United States, it was 4.8. So the United States is almost exactly half of the entire world's spend in medical care.
Yeah, and the big question is, do we get the bang for our buck, right? So compared to the rest of the world, we're spending a whole lot more? And I think the objective answer is we don't, right? We do have great medicine, and I have to say,
it's not a medical spend; it's a business spend.
That's exactly
right. It's all business.
Yeah. I think that, when I first got exposed to the business side of medicine, I worked a lot in the oncology field, and back in the day, every cancer patient died. I mean, there was not very many people that came out of that we just didn't have that great effective therapies. There were people that survived and had long term, but it was not the rule. It was the exception by far. And we've changed that a lot. A lot of people are living a lot longer with cancer. But the physicians that I work closely with and saw not just how patient care was delivered, but the business side of things and the impact of things like litigation, for example. So when you have a lot of people dying, unfortunately, you have a lot of families saying, hey, they shouldn't have died, right? And so I guess, that was one of my experiences early on to say, wow, that's something that you don't really think about. But, unfortunately, doctors, the carrying insurance policies and malpractice insurance and how that guides a lot of decisions that are made, once again, from the business side, more than I got to protect myself, because if I get sued and if there's an award here and if I'm found that something that I'm responsible for, it can destroy you, right? So it's changed a lot about how doctors think about how they actually practice medicine. And you had experience in that area. Is that when you're talking about running your own practice?
I think everybody does have experience in it. I could talk for hours about malpractice, about litigation, about what it does to physicians, about working with attorneys. It's a nightmare.
It is.
It really is. Yeah. But when I was working in an emergency room years ago, I was an orderly, and I got to know some of the surgeons really well. And I learned that one of the cardiac surgeons was having higher than usual mortality rates. And I was inquisitive, so I was asking what's going on. And what I was told was, well, he takes all comers. He'll take care of patients that nobody else will.
Yep.
But guess what? He also got chastised by the hospital for a higher than usual mortality rate.
Yep.
Well, then how do you balance that? Do you let people die because they're risky? And so that's one part of this, right?
No, it's a huge moral and ethical question, right? It's
and the other part is, are surgeons not aggressive enough with their care because they're afraid that if it fails, they're going to get sued? And so literally malpractice litigation has guided, in my opinion, surgeons or physicians of any specialty away from a possibility of a successful treatment, because of the fear that if it doesn't go the way that the patient or the patient's family thinks, that they're going to get sued.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating you bring that up. But one of my mentors that I work with for years, he would say the worst thing that could happen to you is you're famous and you get cancer, because no one wants to hurt you, and you have to hurt cancer patients. Unfortunately, you have to expose them to a lot of toxicity to cure them, to give them effective therapy. And he said, when you have somebody that's a famous person, everyone's scared. The doctors are really nervous, because if something goes wrong, you don't want to be the person that ended up hurting that person for just reputation wise, but not just that. Obviously, there's a certain sector of people that are probably more likely to be litigious as well, right? So,
and I know this is legalese, but you can have in the consent form every risk that you've talked to the patient about, and it does not protect you from litigation.
Yep.
which is also very frustrating because you've literally talked to the patient and the family, told them the risks. They have looked at you and said, I accept those risks. And if that happens to happen, you're open to litigation.
Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating because, we experience that a lot with, clinical trials where we have, pages and pages of things that say, listen, no one's ever tried this before. And that you're taking on risk. But, the flip side is they'll say, well, they're vulnerable, right? I mean, these are people that have, sometimes life-threatening conditions. And of course they're going to say yes because, but they don't fully understand. So it's rough. Like you said, it's, because you're trying to do what's best for them and you're trying to explain to them because there isn't anything that doesn't have a risk associated with it. There's no single medicine that you can prescribe that is zero risk. I mean, they may have very, very small risk, but everything has some risk. Every procedure has risk. They can get an infection. Right. They can get, they're just stuff happens, right? It's just, it's being alive, right?
So it shouldn't surprise anybody that physicians start changing their practice pattern to something that is easier to take care of, less risky, and more lucrative.
Yep.
It shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the sad reality. And what's happening, I think what we're seeing a lot in medicine is health disparities are actually getting worse, which is just interesting that we're spending more money, and yet there's a bigger difference between people that the haves and the have-nots, right? The people that can pay cash and can do elective surgeries and do things that other people can't do. And I think it's widened that gap. And that's one of the most frustrating things I think of being involved in medicine is we've made so much progress. And when you can't give that to everybody, that's just frustrating. And it's not right. And I think morally we all get it, but we also understand why. Right? It's not an easy solution.
There was a meeting I went to one time that was talking about healthcare disparities, and I know what they were talking about racial disparities or economic disparities. But I told them afterwards, I said, you have to understand something. This is people that come to the emergency room with a severe wound on their foot, right? Big abscesses. They need surgery in the hospital. They're in the hospital for a week and a half. They have no insurance. But the hospital's picking up the tab because they're mandated to.
Yep.
They get discharged and told to follow up in our office with no insurance.
Yep.
We have literally no way to take care of them because they can't afford supplies. They can't afford the medicines they need. And therefore, they don't get taken care of because they stop coming to see us. Now, somebody will look at the doctor and say, you're giving care to one person but not care to the other. And I will say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I take care of everybody that comes into my office. These people get dumped in clinics that have been taken care of for free in our hospital, but the hospital is not mandated to keep taking care of them outpatient. So that creates an economic disparity that none of the providers created.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's, you look at it and I guess it opens up the next subject, which is insurance and how that impacts patient care. And I don't think there's anybody in the medical field that loves insurance. The doctors hate it. The patients hate it. I'm not sure that even the insurance companies, they don't seem to like the business that they're in either, right? Because they don't want to pay for anything. So it's the strangest industry. But it really has become a real obstacle and roadblock for delivering patient care. And having prior authorizations and having to justify treatments, it's impacted the autonomy of doctors to say, hey, this is what I think in my experience. And, with years of doing this is what's best for this person. And you get somebody to come back and say, no, that's not what you're going to do.
Yeah, we
BioHive is a nonprofit building, branding, and bringing together Utah's fast-growing life science ecosystem. Get involved today. BioHive's Women in Technology and Science community hosts events for anyone and everyone wanting to support women in life science STEM. And BioHive's Health Tech Hub community hosts events for those operating at the intersection of health and technology. Register for events and see what's buzzing at biohive.com.
We really are being told how to treat patients, but It's a funny comment that you made that the doctors don't like it, the patients don't like it, the insurance carriers don't like it. Everything has changed a lot. And I heard one time somebody making an argument that health insurance really isn't the insurance that people say. If you talk about car insurance, for instance, you don't walk into the mechanic and hand them your Allstate car insurance thing and have it fixed. That's not what happens.
Yeah.
Your car insurance is in case you're getting a car accident.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
But health insurance, people think they have insurance, so now they are privileged to have everything.
Access
to everything.
Yeah.
And I have to tell people sometimes when they say, well, why can't I get this? And I go, well, look at your policy. What are you paying for?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're paying for all that, then you get all that.
Yep.
If you're not paying for all that, then you don't get all that. You get to pay for it with your own money.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Now, the physicians on the flip side, their billing departments, they do understand that and they know exactly what that person's insurance will cover.
Yep.
And so when I recommend that they have this and they say that they need pre-auth for it, I go, okay, well, that's the kind of insurance they're paying for.
Yep.
You want an insurance with no pre-auth, you get to pay a higher premium.
That's exactly
right.
Yeah.
But I've had to play the game a little bit, and I've had somebody that needed a couple of toes amputated because they were dead and they weren't healing. They were having issues, and we called the insurance company and they needed pre-auth. They have like 15 working days to give you the answer for your pre-authorization.
Yeah.
So I looked at the guy and I go, what are you doing Sunday night? And he goes, nothing. I go, good. I want you to go to the emergency room. I'm operating on you Monday. And once you're in the emergency room, pre-auth doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So we physicians have to find ways around the insurance companies to take care of these patients. And it's just absolutely ludicrous.
It is. It's ludicrous. And the cost is obviously different when you do that as well. So it's instead of having a plan scheduled, you're now doing it as an emergency procedure. And so it's different, but you had to do it that way because the patient needed that care and you're waiting for, he doesn't have 2 weeks to sit around and wait for that.
Yeah, I had a 99-year-old patient, somebody that all of our clinic people just loved. He had a toe wound that had osteomyelitis, bone infection. So he needed 6 weeks of IV antibiotics. So we called the infusion company, and they said his insurance won't cover it outpatient. He needs to go in to a convalescent home for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So we put him in a convalescent home. He gets hospital-acquired pneumonia 4 weeks later and dies.
Yeah.
I put him in the hospital to heal his toe wound. He dies of pneumonia.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't authorize infusion at his home.
Yeah. And there's something nobody thinks of as well is that it's not the healthiest place in the world to be hanging out in a hospital or certainly in a rehab situation. So
not at all.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it all comes down to, I think, like you said, I think you always get what you pay for. And that's the problem with medicine is we pay for the wrong stuff and we incentivize the wrong stuff. And so and then you complain about the outcomes. It's like, but that's what we paid for, right? That's we incentivize this outcome. It's hard though to, we've kind of it feels like, you and I both travel a lot. We were talking about traveling. It's funny when you have
for work.
For work, not for fun. No, I when I want to have fun, I stay home. I don't travel. But I go to a lot of countries that are developing countries, and it's fascinating that like their cell phone systems are better than ours. And I'm like, why is that? It's because they started with nothing, right? And so they built our cell phone system bolted onto an old landline. So, like our cell phones actually go into the old copper wires that have been there for 50 years. And, and so, you look at it, it's kind of like our medical system that we're the victim of our own success, where we built the best medical system in the world. And the problem is we've been very bad at adding new technology and new things. As we make advances, we're bolting it onto this old antiquated system. Whereas other places started from scratch because they had nothing, right? So you look at it and say, well, why can't we have something that looks like that? It's like, well, we'd have to burn the whole thing down.
Which is impossible to do.
And it's impossible.
Well, it's impossible to do it and still take care of the patients.
So we got ourselves into a situation where we've kind of have this Frankenstein where we've just been adding pieces to it. And now it's like, how do we fix this? Because it's now this monster that, it started out with perfectly good good system. And as we made advances and we bolted stuff onto it, it's just gotten harder and harder. And, and it's become bigger and bigger business too. And that's,
well, I have a few thoughts about that. I'll share with you.
You bet.
And excuse the analogy, but I'm actually doing a little research on the Constitution. I have to do a little talk about that.
Yeah.
And there's criticisms of the Constitution, right? But the Constitution sets out some laws and some guidelines. The Constitution works only as well as the constituents work. Somebody's going to figure out how to screw it up.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to figure out how to cheat it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's going on in this system. With Medicare or any other insurance companies, you've got a bunch of bad actors out there who are cheating the system, which necessitates the system to start making guidelines, which everybody hates the guidelines. Yeah. So let's say that people are treating everybody's carotid surgery or carotid stenosis with surgery outside of the norm, right? Outside of the standard of care. And the insurance company comes along and says, well, the only way we're going to be able to curb the expenditures here is to do pre-auth. We've got to find out what's going on with the patient. Now, does that seem unreasonable?
Seems
Not
like
one iota.
Seems like a reasonable
But everybody
thing.
hates pre-authorization.
Yep.
Because what's happening is there's the bad apples that made pre-authorization necessary.
Yep.
And now we have to go through all of the hoops. The other problem with taking care of patients, believe it or not, are the patients.
Yeah.
You can ask any wound care provider out there, any vascular surgeon, I'm obviously within those arenas, but in any other arena, what is one of their biggest issues with caring for patients? And it'll be non-compliance.
Yeah.
The patients are not taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
So they'll come in and they'll even get mad at the hospital, and they'll even get mad at the doctor. Well, why did this turn out so bad? Heaven forbid you can look at the patient and say, because you sat at home with gangrene in your foot for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Excuse the expression, but you can't shine a turd. I mean, you're going to end up with your leg amputated because you sat at home for 3 weeks.
Yep.
That's not our fault. That's not the hospital's fault. That's actually your fault.
Yep.
And patients, unfortunately, some of them don't take ownership of their own health. And you mentioned going outside of the country.
Yeah.
I did a medical mission in Honduras about 2 decades ago, and you should see how these people try to take care of themselves after we see them. They are so grateful for the care they're getting. Here in the United States, it's almost a demand for care that they want. And, people aren't exercising but want their blood pressure pills. I mean, they won't stop smoking, and I'm amputating things. I mean, that goes into a whole other thing of addictions, but the fact of the matter is they're not helping themselves, but they want us to solve their problems. And it becomes extremely frustrating for a provider to take care of patients like that.
No, it is one of the most challenging things. The system isn't necessarily a barrier. It's actually a lot of times it's the human behavior of the patient and patient noncompliance. I mean, it's a joke almost to say, I go to the doctor and he tells me, well, eat right and exercise. Ha ha. It's like, but that is part of it. That if you want to improve your health, we do know there's some things that will help. Generally, with almost everything is quit smoking, quit start exercising and eat better. We've gotten spoiled, I think, because we do have so many new technologies and interventions that can extend our lives and eliminate a lot of things that used to kill us. But what's happened, and we talk about this a lot, is now we're dealing with this this epidemic of chronic diseases. Like in the old days, we didn't really have, people didn't live for 20 years dealing with a single disease. Either they died of it quickly or they didn't get it, right? And now it just seems like everybody, and almost everybody over 65 has at least one chronic condition. I mean, it's fascinating. And that's not how it used to be. Now, we definitely have more people over 65 than we used to, but the percentage of people that are dealing with at least one chronic condition, it's gone up quite a bit. And I think there's a direct correlation between obviously the changes in our lifestyle and the fact that we use medicine as a replacement for healthy behavior. We just say, well, I'll just take a pill. And like you said, high blood pressure, they got a pill for that. And I'm partly responsible. I'm making pills for people, right?
Yeah.
But it's the hardest thing.
Well, a good analogy is improvement in cars. Okay, when I was a kid, right, 6 or 7 years old, we'd drive home from the movie theater. I'd be laying on the baseboard in the car. It's not the baseboard, the floorboard.
Floorboard, yeah.
The floorboard in the car to keep warm, right?
Yeah.
No seatbelt.
Yep.
No nothing, right?
Yep.
But the cars weren't going very fast, and they were built like tanks, right?
Yep.
I mean, I still remember being in the back dashboard, my mom slamming on the brakes, and I went flying into the front seat, right? I mean, we survived, right?
Yeah.
But the speed limits now are 80 miles an hour down by Nephi.
Yeah.
The cars are fast. They're not built as tough.
Yep.
And so even though seatbelts have come along, people are still dying in car accidents. Why? Because the cars are faster.
Yep.
And so the same thing is happening now. People might say, why isn't longevity longer with all of the cures we have? And the answer is because we're coming up with more diseases. We're coming up with more problems.
Yeah, that's
I mean, as fast as we can cure cancer, you're developing some different kind of cardiomyopathy or GI issue that now we have to figure out.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So, it's interesting that being on the research side and really focusing on science, I look at it and say, well, medicine's all about science, right? But there's so much to do with medicine, with relationships, and I bet as a practicing physician, you could almost predict outcomes from people just based off of knowing the person to say, this person's going to do well, this person's not going to do well.
How successful their surgery will be, and then the longevity of that surgery.
Yeah.
Which again makes you want to look at a patient and say, I'm not going to operate on you if you're going to keep smoking.
Yeah.
But here's a patient who's suffering. So you're actually going to look at somebody and not give them something you could give them because of their lifestyle decision. And so what you do now is you say, well, I'm going to go ahead and operate on your leg. Okay, we're going to try to get things fixed, but I just want you to know that it won't last as long if you keep smoking. So you do the surgery, 6 months later it goes down, and now they're mad at you.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just told you this would happen, but you didn't stop smoking.
Yeah.
So who's to blame? The doctor.
Yeah. You botched the surgery.
You botched the surgery. And so why do surgeons and physicians leave practice? Because they can't do anything right.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose sometimes.
And it's very different now as well with patients having access to information. They all come in, Googled, and they're experts, right? So I have this condition and I need this medicine and here it is, right?
Yeah.
Doc, I know exactly what's wrong with me.
Yeah, Dr. Google is the ultimate consultant.
Yep.
And we used to have to give our second opinion against Dr. Google. Say, well, I see what they wrote, but it's not correct in my experience.
Yeah. Well, now we have AI to deal with too, which is just making it even more complicated.
Even more fascinating. The other thing I wanted to discuss is the lack of personal interaction with patients. Yeah. And I love physicians, clinicians. We don't need to exclude PAs and nurse practitioners. They have that personal interaction with the patient, and I love it. Some of that comes from sympathy. Some of it comes from empathy. When I was young, I kept getting collapsed lungs, and I had to have chest tubes put in, and finally had to have surgery when I was in my early 20s. And I used to help the surgeons put these chest tubes in the emergency room. And now the surgeon I helped was putting a chest tube in me.
Yeah.
And after that, I put chest tubes in patients so much differently.
Yeah.
I used more anesthetic. I sedated them a little. I talked them through it. And all during my surgical career, when we brought patients into the operating room, I always held their hand while they went to sleep. I would even say a prayer with them in the pre-op room if they wanted, because that's what I wanted.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, well, if I want that, why shouldn't I offer that to them?
Absolutely.
But things have made this such a machine that you don't have time for some of that sometimes. The turnover is so fast. And that's part of this that we're going to lose pretty soon as well, is the inability to actually care for the patient.
Yeah, and that's... What if you could get rewarded just for being healthier? Meet Galvin, the company using the latest blockchain technology to reward you for taking care of yourself.
They help with your mind, body, and soul like a personalized health assistant to track your progress and help you feel better. Galvin's G Plus app rewards you for exercise and assesses your mental health in under a minute using AI and over 2,500 voice biomarkers. If you're feeling off, G Plus gives you personalized power-ups, science-backed techniques to help you feel better fast. And here's the best part. When you prioritize your wellness, you earn crypto. Ready to level up your health? Use promo code GOODMED20 at checkout for 20% off. Download G Plus today at the Apple app or Google Play Store and start your wellness journey with Galvin.
That's the hard part about it. And that's the thing I think that actually keeps everybody going as well. That when you talk about all of these problems and everything that's happening in medicine, and you ask, well, why are people still going into this industry? And we talked a little bit. I have a child in medical school right now, and it's I had a long talk about him and said, this is what it's all about. And he's like, no, I want to help people. I want to care about, and that at the end of the day, that's what does keep you going. Is those small wins where you can see that. I mean, you literally save people's lives, right, and change their lives, and there's still enough of those. I think, like you said, it becomes harder and harder as more and more of these things, more pull on your time, where you have managed care systems that are saying you spend 5 minutes with the patient. It's like, well, I can't spend 5 minutes and get it meaningful.
Right.
But I mean, that's hard. But I think I guess you have to take the wins where you can get them, and that's what keeps you going.
Can.
Right?
So the two ends of the spectrum is that you work for a free clinic that's funded by whoever, right? Yeah. You never have to worry about the patient having money. You never have to worry about getting money from the patient, and all you have to do is take care of the patient. And the other end of the spectrum is that you work for a hospital conglomeration, and you have to see a patient every 10 minutes or they get mad at you.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And you've got to make that choice on that spectrum.
And you've got to be in between, and hopefully a little further towards the left side, so you're actually caring for the patient more than you're worried about your job.
Yeah, and that's we put a lot of pressure, and unfortunately, it pushes a lot of folks to really think about the other side of that, which is, well, the more people I can say, the more money I can make, and the more I'll be the shining star instead of the person they're always harassing to say, hey, you need to see more people.
Yeah.
So it does select for a certain type of person, and I mean, there's always jokes about the different specialties in medicine and their personalities. Some of those are a little true, but,
they are.
It does select for different kinds of folks. But I just worry that we're losing a lot of the care in healthcare, and that's that's what, with all the technological advancements and all the improvements in understanding the science behind these diseases, there's still, it's not just health, it's health care. And there's a lot of, and it's almost now that to stay in medicine, you really, that has to be, where your focus is.
Right.
I think if your focus is really just on making money, those guys burn out pretty fast, because you can't stay on that wheel for very long, right?
Well, I would say that the real greedy ones don't burn out because they're not doing the work.
That's right. They figure out a way to
figure
out a way to have other people do stuff for them, right?
Yeah, I knew guys that saw 250 patients a day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They were seeing them in 5 clinics at once.
Yeah, so exactly.
Now they're in prison, because of their Medicare fraud. Different things are happening. I'm not the only surgeon who's done free surgical care, and these patients would come in and they'd owed me, thousands of dollars, and they'd bring me a sack of potatoes their first post-op visit. They'd bring me books, to pay for it because they had no money. One woman owed me, maybe $3,000, $3,500. I think it was $3,300. She lost her Medicaid. And so my biller said, hey, can you address how she's going to do this? And stupid me, I said, hey, have you thought about this bill that you're getting? Yeah, but I don't have any money. I go, I thought so. I'll just let my biller know. So the next week she showed up to the clinic with a bag of Mrs. Fields cookies, Mrs. Fields cookies, those little small ones that are to die for.
Yeah.
And I said, what's this for? And she goes, it's $3,300 worth of cookies. Right? She's doing her best. She's got a special needs child. She's working at Wendy's as many hours as they'll give her.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit there and harp on her about owing me money.
Yeah.
We just have to swing this pendulum back and take care of patients. And the thing that hinders that is nearly everything we've already talked about today.
Yeah. And, it's, I hate to just harp on negative stuff and think about, there's still so much good in medicine and so much good that comes from providing care for people. If you get up every morning and have to go to work, there's very few things that I can think are more nobler than helping heal sick people. I mean, when we think about, that's what your job and that's what your life is about. And it's just difficult that now it's become such a big business that there's just so much pulling you away from why you got into it and what keeps you motivated every day. And I just hope that people generally recognize that doctors don't have the easiest life in the world. It's not they may glamorize and look, watch television shows and see what they think doctors, what lifestyle they live. But there are far more physicians that are doing what you talked about, that will say, you know what, fine, we'll make that bill go away. And because you care, and that's what drew you to it in the first place. And that's what keeps you motivated. And to me, that's what keeps me doing crazy stuff and trying to, that if I can save, I've talked previously that I lost my grandfather the year I was born, and I lost my mom when I was really young. And to me, what motivates me is if I can discover something that keeps somebody else's grandfather. So I never knew my grandpa, didn't know he died the year I was born. And, lost my mom a long time before she should still be alive today. And she died long time ago. So, that's what motivates me. That's what I care about. I'm not doing this to make a bunch of money. I'm doing this to make an impact on the world. And, we were chatting earlier that, it's fascinating to me to think something that I've discovered, something that I worked on, has had an impact on millions of people. And that's what keeps me going, is to think that there's somebody's mom out there that's alive because of something I worked on. And I think physicians think a lot about that hey, I can't save everybody, but I can save this person. And that keeps you going.
Well, and it does, but there's a physician burnout rate now that's incredibly high, and there's a lot of different reasons physicians burn out. And I really think one of the biggest reasons is they are trying to take care of the patient, and they have so many hurdles to go over that they can't do it, and they just get tired of trying. And that's a little bit about why I stopped practicing. I stopped doing surgery 5 years ago. I stopped doing wound care about 3 years ago. And I did that because all I ever did all day long was put out electronic medical record fires, or calling pharmacies, or angry patients, or nurses that didn't like how I did things. And I just said, this is ridiculous. There's got to be another way I can still take care of patients. And that's why I'm blessed to be doing what I'm doing, because I still have that opportunity. In fact, not only helping patients, I'm helping providers who are helping patients. I have the empathy for them of what they're going through, trying to take care of these patients. So I have this, I'm kind of an advocate for them, if you will. I can understand where they're coming from. I understand the pain points, and we kind of talk about it and reassure each other that, it's worth it. But there was a time when I'd go into surgery just wondering, okay, what's going to happen today that I get to worry about litigation next year? Yeah. Because that's just the way it was.
Yeah, and you can't blame, you can't go day after day with that hanging over your head. It's just, you can't blame people for burning out. And we've got to address it. I think that we may not have all the solutions here today. I'm not sure we came up with a whole lot of good solutions, but the reality is that the pendulum has to start swinging the other direction. And I think there are signs that things are changing, right? I think that I think we realize that you project out into the future. I don't think there's a single hospital system in the country that looks 10 years ahead and says, wow, the best days are ahead of us. I don't think anybody feels that way.
No.
So I think that we're going to see change. And I hope that because of the importance and the nobleness of what the endeavor that we're involved in trying to produce good medicine, deliver good medicine to patients, that if we can keep that as the guiding star for us, that we're going to end up in a better place. I think that's the other thing about, we tend to be, people in the medical field tend to be optimistic, to think that, hey, we can figure this out. We can solve these problems. So I don't think any of these problems are unsolvable. I don't think there's easy fixes for a lot of them, because it's taken us a long time to dig ourselves into this hole. It's going to take us a while to get out. But at the same time, there's amazing stuff happening out there, and there's new treatments and new approaches and technologies that are making it so that we can do things that we've never done before. And surgeon, you can do robotic surgery. Sitting in Utah or Arizona, across the world now. It just blows my mind that you can do that kind of stuff.
It is amazing. It's
amazing.
And I've seen a lot of that stuff, come around while I've been practicing. But I just hope that, I used to train a lot of surgery residents, and I used to tell them, don't you ever, ever make a treatment decision based on money. Yeah. Ever. Just treat the patient the way they're supposed to be treated and learn how to bill correctly. Right? Yeah. Just learn how to bill correctly. Yeah. Don't be fraudulent. Don't lie. Don't falsify things. Just bill correctly. Take care of the patient and bill correctly. And they'll take care of a lot of patients. But the interesting thing is that I used to really hesitate to talk to these kids about my frustrations, because I think, well, they're going to be negative about it. But the fact of the matter is the discussion went well, because I could literally tell them, hey, when I started, there was no EMR. You guys have grown up with EMR, so that's not a pain point for you. Right. It's a pain point for me.
Because I know what it was like without it.
Right. Yeah. Not any different than saying, hey, that seatbelt law? Yeah. Exactly. That was a pain point for us. Yeah. Not a pain point for you.
That's right.
You've always had to put on your seatbelt.
You never knew any different. Yeah.
So I really hope that physicians can continue to keep their eye on the ball about caring for patients. But something has got to change with the insurances, the hospitals, the clinics, whatever it might be, that keeps throwing roadblocks up in trying to take care of patients. Even Medicare has local coverage determinations that they say, well, this will help the physician. And I say, you're taking the autonomy away from the physician. You're actually telling them how to take care of the patient. Yeah. That's not the right direction. Yeah, that's so somehow it needs to change. So I don't think we've solved anything other than identifying everything we need to solve, which is the beginning of solving things.
That is the beginning. That's right. If you don't know what you have to fix, it's hard to fix it. Yeah. So that's half of medicine, is diagnosing the problem, right? So once you got diagnosed, then you can start taking action.
I'll tell you, there's nothing substitute for patients coming in and, thanking us for literally saving their lives with ruptured aneurysms and saving their legs. And, there's no substitute, but I'll tell you, it gets awfully hard. Yeah. And it's frustrating when the good days become less common and the bad days become the common. That's true.
And unfortunately, like you said, I think folks our age, especially, I think because a lot of the obstacles, a lot of the roadblocks and the challenges that we've talked about have been in the last 20 years. Things are very different than they were 30 years ago, for sure. So hopefully, we have a new generation of doctors that, I think that it shouldn't be a surprise to them, because this is not something that is they can find articles every day about physician burnout and about how people are leaving the medical profession, but it's still gratifying and still gives you some hope that people are, even with all of that and knowing all of that. I mean, like I said, my son just said, this is what I want to do. It's like, all right,
good for him.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Go do good and
Buckle up.
and buckle up. That's right.
Buckle up. No, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
I mean, good night in the 60s and 70s. They were doing radical mastectomies on everybody. Now that's lymph node, sentinel lymph node and a lumpectomy, and people are cured. They're on medications.
Far different. Yep.
It's great news, but it sure is frustrating sometimes. But overall, it's been a good career, and luckily, you feel guilty stopping what you've been trained to do for so long. But I love it when I can talk to different clinicians, see what they're doing, offer some help, and things like that. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
But why is it fun? Because I don't have the headache.
Ah, there you go.
I don't have the headaches anymore.
Well, Marshall, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a great discussion, and good medicine. There's so many components to it, but I think we've touched on some of the barriers of things and obstacles that we're facing today. But we also talked about what good medicine really comes down to is doing the best things that we can for patients, and that's at the core, I think, of most people that I know in this industry. So hopefully you enjoyed the podcast today. If you did, please subscribe. It helps keep supporting us and being able to produce this content. And go out and hug a doctor.
Yeah, we need it.
They need it. So thank you for joining. I'll see you next time on Good Medicine. That's it for today's episode of Good Medicine. Thanks for joining us as we explore the science and stories behind health, medicine, and innovation. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's a great zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please click, follow, and leave a review for the podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you have questions or comments for me, please put them in the comments section on YouTube or reach out on all social media platforms at Good Medicine. Links are in the description. The best way to support the podcast is to check out the sponsors of the show. You can do this by looking at the links in the show notes. That's it for today. I'm Dr. David Beers, and we'll see you next time.